Yeah, so this is a pretty unusual community that we live in, because it hasn't just been our own families that we've accompanied and seen our own kids grown up here, but we've all lived with one another for quite a long time. I mean, Arnie and I have been here, I think, for 35 or 36 years now.
Sounds right.
You guys have been here for a while.
25 for me.
22.
50-some.
50-some? Wow.
So when did you arrive?
I came in 71, Bernie a little before, and then left again.
Well, I came twice, so it's always a complicated story. I spent 6 months here in 1969 as a college student, and then I came back in spring of 1972, so just past the 50-year mark in that regard.
When I got off the plane at the airport, she picked me up.
I did.
So my first... Well, I'd been to America before. I'd worked here for a summer when I was a student as a landscaper up in Boston. But yeah, my second trip to America, the first thing I saw was Arnie. And we've been married for 30 years now. Yeah, November 22nd was our 30th anniversary. Just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. So how did you guys meet?
Well, I came in 99 and I lived with Guy and Annie. I was a returning coworker in my 4th year, and Andreas was a very green young coworker.
Yeah, in 2002 I came, and yeah, it was quite a year for me, learning, and so Tunde was right there reminding me of all the things that needed doing and asking me why I didn't do them properly. So it wasn't very romantic at first, at least from my perspective. But we did become friends, and I think by the end of the year we got together as a couple. Yeah, and then I decided to stay and so on. That's how the story goes. Yeah, and we started house parenting a few years after.
That's right.
You did your training, and I started the academy, which was brand new back then. And then I think in my 3rd or 4th year, we started house parenting in Rowan with
That's right.
9 or 10 students.
Yeah, lots of
It
them.
was fun.
And I was a teacher with Guy.
Yeah, we taught high school together.
That's right. And then when we got married, I remember getting married and switching roles after that.
That's right.
I was a teacher and you were the main house parent, but we were really running the house still. I was teacher and house parent. I remember meeting half of the students in my class. I would leave breakfast and then meet them again in school.
Yes.
So that was interesting and exciting. But then it was very conscious that when we wanted to start a family, I was like, okay, you became the teacher, and then I stayed at home to be the house parent. And that was exciting times. And we had other families. Before we had children, we had other people living with us. Ginny with her daughter and Andrea Schad. Most of the time, I've always lived with a family in my time.
Either yours or somebody else's.
Either mine or somebody else's, except for there were a couple of years when I lived with Nicole. But, there were no staff children, so the staff children were really, really part of the house and the house community. And it was, for me, it was like that was the experience, that I always wanted, because also for the coworkers, it was like you could see where, how do they fit in and how do the children fit in with the others. And my own children had really good friends when we lived with some of the high schoolers when they were little, like Asa, and they lived upstairs with us, and Jeremiah lived with us when Leon was tiny. And
But you've always had a lot of children living in the house, students living in the house
yes.
with you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a big extended family, which is, I think, the experience we've all had. Right? I mean, you live with 6, 7 children and your own 2 kids and
Usually more.
4 or 5 co-workers. There's like 20 people all together in a house. So our family experience, we have much bigger families than people normally have. And you guys had also a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And then students in the house and then co-workers.
That's right. And also, our children had friendships with the children with disabilities. And even when they were very young, they would be taken out. One of the kids was pushing the pram with one of my children. And that was still fine. You know, those days that all worked very seamlessly together. And sometimes you don't manage to really meet the needs of the children, sometimes not of your own children, but it just takes turns and it goes out, and they don't get maybe so much attention, but then it's a wonderful, rich life. Actually, also other families are there with their young children.
And we had 4 children very close together, and then the 5th one a little bit later on. And certainly the four who were close together, they really became good playmates with each other. And then, as Elsa said, extended into the other staff children who were living in the village. And we always felt this mutual support, that we supported the children and the special needs children, and the special needs children supported us in ways that they could. You know.
I remember your mother remarked how surprised she was that our kids were so happy when vacation was over and the children came back. It was like, yay, now we have life again. And she just thought it would be the opposite, right?
Yeah, for me, the coworkers also somehow belong into it. And the more I'm aging, I start developing this kind of parental feelings for the young, 18, 19-year-old coworkers. And the other night they were going out, and I told them not to come back so late, so they're ready for the morning. And you really, and I had one experience. I remember when we were young parents still, and I think Leon was very young. Well, like he was a toddler, and as a parent, you're very emotional and protective of your kids. And there was a young coworker who once said, "Oh, Leon is so annoying. He can be so annoying." And I took it so personal. I was so upset at first. And then when I reflected on it, and I thought, she sounds like an older sister, which is really, and then I could overcome like my kind of anger, because as the parent, I was like, how can she say that? How dare she? And I actually understood, she's 18, and she's right, he can be annoying. He was noisy maybe. And an older sister would say it. I don't have to be upset, So sometimes I look at it that way now, and that helps.
Some of our children made lasting friendships with some of the co-workers. In fact, even became a basis like for a European trip that one or the other of my children set off to Germany and visited friends, which were former co-workers here.
Most of them, actually. Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing that's remarkable about this, is how, it's a community with all of these families in it, and the extended families and the children, but we all come from such different backgrounds and such different places. I mean, you're from Finland, Arnie. Bernie's American by origin, by birth. Elsa's from Germany. Tunda, you're from...
I'm Hungarian.
You're Hungarian.
From Transylvania.
From Transylvania. Andreas is German. I was born in England. I mean, and now most of us, are American citizens, but it's been, we all came from different places, and kind of the communities assembled from all of these different kind of cultural experiences and foods and backgrounds and stories, and it's something quite remarkable. And still to this day, having so many people come and do the training program here. They come from different countries, the academy, and we met, as I say, at the airport, but we started living together in Whitestone when there was a team that was running Whitestone back in 92, maybe, the fall of 92. And we were also, Arnie and I were also involved in this project because you were becoming a horseback riding therapist. And so we were living in Whitestone and we were building a barn. And I think that Thanksgiving...
That was your first fundraising project.
That was my first fundraising project, and it was my first time. Little did I know that I would be living with large animals for the next 30-something years. Yeah, because, and I remember that Thanksgiving, that whole vacation, the barn was built where the forest was.
Yes.
And so we cleared the trees. I cut them down, and you cleared them with the tractor. You hauled them out with the tractor. We spent the entire week
We
cutting
had
down
a
trees.
whole workroom, remember?
Yeah.
It was our Whitestone co-workers devoted their week. And we had a crew of people cooking meals for us. And we were working like from 7 a.m. till it got dark to cutting the trees down and moving the wood chips out and doing all that.
It was...
Clearing the land
yeah.
for the barn.
So
Yes.
and then the barn got built that winter, and then the horses arrived
Some horses came in the spring.
in the spring.
But we had a rooster first.
Yeah.
Remember? Jack the rooster. That was our first animal in the barn.
And then somewhere in there, our first son arrived too.
Yes.
Like
He
a
did
year
come.
later at a year later at Thanksgiving, you were very, very pregnant, and then in December in Advent he arrived.
That's right.
There is, of course, a mutuality of interconnections. That year that you speak of, 92, 93, was a year that after 20 years or so of house parenting, we had a sabbatical year off. And we had been house parents in Whitestone.
That's right.
And we vacated, and you folks together with the Shuns, I believe.
That's right.
Uh,
Yeah. We took over
Took over.
Whitestone. And
So
you
that-
went to
We went
Horseshoe.
down Horseshoe Trail.
Yeah.
We lived down the
Yeah.
road about 2 miles and
That's
had a, quote, year off.
That's right.
And through your generous support, we then returned to Whitestone. And I guess you moved
We
closer
went to
the barn.
Catalpa.
Oh, yeah.
We went to Catalpa.
Yeah. And back in those days, there were more people that wanted to house parents than we had houses. And there was, I think, so we ended up in Catalpa with, I think, 6 or 7 high school students and a couple of co-workers and our new son. And I think it was then Carsten and Sabina were with David and Claire up in Garden House. So there were two families with 2 young kids in Garden House with the kids. I mean, that's the other thing that I think has really changed. You know, when we lived in Catalpa, we had 4 high school boys in a bedroom in 2 bunk beds, and that was quite common, that you would have at least 3 kids and sometimes 4 kids in a room. So these small houses now that we would have 3 or 4 kids in had 6 or 7 students in and co-workers packed in, and
Yes.
it was, and we've done a lot of building since then
We
too.
had luxurious 1 bedroom between 3 of us.
We did.
But we were never in a bedroom except to sleep, so there was the rest of the house.
Yeah, it was us and then the basket with Will in him, with Will in it. He had a little
And Charlie,
wicker
who came every
bassinet.
morning at 4 o'clock.
Charlie would come and
Yes. Only gradually did also certain walls and certain doors come up in the houses to begin to create something which people call privacy.
yeah.
To begin with, we were all thrown in with each other, and it seemed to be what we were looking for. Of course, it wasn't a perfect fit always,
Yeah.
but I think we could say that's what we were looking for, that a real common life together.
Yeah, for me it's also interesting. I having lived in Rowan for most of my time here, because I came to Rowan as a young co-worker, and then that's the house we took on, and except for 3 years where we were in Ember, we pretty much more or less lived in Rowan those 20 some years. And it's interesting for me to kind of follow how, I mean, Rowan is a really amazingly designed house which allows for many different constellations, and so for us as a couple and then family with children, it's interesting to follow how we have adjusted the use of the time, the use of the house to kind of the times and the needs as they have changed, where we lived in different places, like you said earlier, and other families or people lived elsewhere. And then we moved to the family apartment, and for a while we shared that space, which has 4 bedrooms and a living room upstairs, kind of a little bit apart from the rest of the house, with students and also other co-workers at times. And now it's a space also, as our children have aged, they're now kind of, one is a teenager, one is 11. They are not so much aligned, their schedules anymore with the house, so they kind of have their own life now and their own needs, and I think both for the house and for the family, it's mutually beneficial that there is a little bit of the separation possible now. And also in the house, I mean, we used to have, I'm telling the coworkers now, I used to live right next to a dormitory with students, and of course we also had that whole system with dormitories where you were responsible, and if a student woke up at night, then you went and checked on your dormitory. And now we have a different approach where one person is responsible for checking on the students. And so now all our coworkers live downstairs and only the students live on the main floor, and every night there's somebody who sleeps on the main floor to kind of pay attention. And I think that really meets the needs of the students and also the coworkers this year, that they can, or nowadays, that they can retreat a little bit, but we're still a house community, we're still living under the same roof. All that has been possible in Rowan because of the size and the number of rooms and the flexibility you get by having 3 floors and different spaces. So it's interesting to see how that has evolved over 20 years.
I mean, I think the new stuff that we're trying to build has that kind of flexibility. That it's a house with the children, but also where families or long-term co-workers can kind of have their own spaces. I mean, there's a kind of 4-bedroom apartment with a little kitchen and bathroom that you described that Rowan has, but on the same level and directly connected to the house, and then an apartment for long-term co-workers, which is also ADA accessible downstairs. Because I remember when I came, this generational experience that you describe, I mean, you come and you're a young co-worker, you get married, you have kids, you see your kids grow up and become teenagers. That's one process. But I remember when I came and I was in the training program in the first year here, and Elsa and Tina Bruckner, you were 2 of the teachers, I think puppet making and other things with us. And I remember thinking, and Bernie too, I mean, Bernie's always had that beard. I remember thinking how old you all were. I was 24, and you must have been, Bernie was probably 40, and you were probably in your late 30s, and I thought you were so old. and now here we are, we've lived together for 35 years, and you see that whole generation.
Now it's come true.
Yeah, I mean, you see this generational experience of, people that come and stay, and really we do. I mean, you've got everything from, the students and the staff kids and the young house parents and young co-workers, all the way through to, really kind of grandparent figures in the community, all living together and trying to find how to live with the kinds of needs that you have as you get older. I mean, that's been really interesting. And for us, I mean, we're still young, but we're nearly 60 now. And definitely things change. I mean, your ability to keep up with the mayhem and chaos of daily life with a house full of your own kids and, wonderful students that have these, beautiful personalities, but also, I mean, they can be a handful. The energy that you have and the bandwidth that you have to be able to just be nimble with that, definitely, as your joints get stiffer, also that energy declines a little bit. But the desire to be involved in all the experiences that you've accumulated are still, there's never a time, I think, in this community when your experience and the things you can bring are not really valuable. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I feel very privileged that we as an older couple can still live here, even if we're not giving, 100%. There was a time when everybody who lived here did all they could, and everybody was sort of this younger and middle range of age. There was not old age per se.
Yeah.
Even Ursula was still really fully involved. But over time, I think it's really a privilege that we are not being asked to go to a retirement home. I mean, of course, if we wanted to, that's a different matter. But that we're still welcome to be here and that it's possible. And I think that's really great, that one can still be part of this life and not be sort of useless somewhere away.
I think for particularly the elders in the community, for our children, like we don't have the grandparents here. Like obviously they are in Europe and overseas, their actual grandparents. But we have always had part of the house, like we have had now for the last few years. We had Norma and Christoph Andreas, and we have had Nikki ever since, we had children. Nikki has been with us, and they really have deep connections to those people, and certain like a grandparent. And I also remember, Elsa, you asking my children to be part of a festival, and could they come, and and I was like, well, you ask them, they're probably gonna say yes to you, but if I ask them, they might not. And they were happy to join for these festivals and do puppets. Or during the COVID time, I remember they put together this whole puppet show for the whole community for Whitsun. With the other staff children, and that was, kind of under Elsa's guidance, these people who took initiative. And I think all the staff children, they look at, these are all, we don't talk about them as my grandparents, but they have, they are really part of the village, and they go, like Julian goes to Hawthorne, and he looks around and he looks at the flowers, and they make connections, and they are really look up to these wise people.
And it's like that for our boys with Barbara. I mean, she lived with us when they were little and did homework with the boys and taught them all sorts of card games. They've been pretty good at cards.
Drank lots of root beer.
Lots of root beer, yeah. I don't know that they needed to learn to play poker when they were 10, but anyway. But she was, and then she was also their kindergarten teacher. I mean, that was the other thing, is that our kids we've had various iterations of early learning in kindergarten programs here, where our kids have been able to be part of the community until really they went to grade school. And that, just seeing the kid, being able to walk your child to school. And I used to be able to sit in the office and watch Will and Sam play out the window. It drove me nuts that the land crew would rake all the leaves up, and then the kindergarten kids would all go and jump in them and spread them all over the place again. Be tapping on my window. But it's so lovely to see all the kids growing up here. And then, as you say, one of the other things I think that's been very special for me, I think for both of us, is the festivals, and the fact that the festival life, can involve everybody here. And I know particularly when our kids were younger, and they were in lower school and middle school, as teenagers, they kind of shy away from sort of, the community activities a little bit more, but they loved the festivals. And, the one year that Will actually, for some reason, Will and Sam decided they were going to be in the Shepherd's Play when they were a little bit older. Those things are sort of really, really special. And the festival life really is. It's hard to imagine the home life without the festival life. The season tables and the changing of the year, and the songs and the Beaver Run songbook, that most of which have been written by Christoph Andreas, and that are old chestnuts. I mean, we live with a young woman she's non-verbal, but she hums all of the songs in the Beaver Run songbook when she's walking backwards and forwards through the woods to our education centre over at Beaver Farm in the mornings. And just you see how that festival life kind of is a glue for the community, and the students they just soak it in. It's so wonderful.
And another aspect aside from the festivals for that is also really the landscape and the property we have here, the campus, and how we can use that as a community, whether it's the staff children, the students, us. And I also have the sense that most of us at one time or another, you guys shared this kind of really intense anecdote of clearing for the barn, but I think most of us have at one time or another worked on the land.
Elsa and I actually, in a way, built our relationship on gardening and farming activities. In those days, we had 2 milk cows and a whole bunch of chickens and ducks. And of course, there were other animals too, that sheep and goats and then horses, which Guy already referred to. And we met over gardening, and we had a very strong land impulse amongst in the community then. And yes, when I returned from college, I came as a gardener and had a work crew, and within a short time, Elsa and I were taking care of the dairy cows. Tina Bruckner was one of those 2 who helped with our cows. And yeah, it was a different way of life, and it certainly included land work in many different shapes and forms.
But it's been a good life. I mean, I have no regrets, and would do it all over again.
But I don't think I would have stayed here for 30 years if it would have been a regret. I mean, we talked about once, would you, if you would have a ton of money, would you change it all? If you would win a lottery, would you change it? What would you change? I'm like, I wouldn't change anything. I just would have more money, but nothing would change. I mean, that would not be a reason for me to say, okay, now I have the money, so now I can do whatever. And maybe I have been blessed that I've always been able to do what I wanted to do. And also looking at life in a community, yes, I know it's a school. I know I'm still living and working in a school. But yet, to me, the more importance is in the community. To the living together, working together. That's sort of that's the main thing. Because you can go to school anywhere. But you can't live in a community which has a school and everything. So.
And of course, I mean, building community is an incredible challenge, I mean, we make
I
it
think
sound
it's a challenge. It's been challenged every day, and it continues to be a challenge. But I think if there's no challenge, what would be the point of life?
Right.
I mean, we all grow. I think when things are really easy and smooth, it gets really boring. It would be nice to have more boring days, but eventually, we all know that if it goes too smoothly, too routine, too everything, something is missing. And I think life in a community with special needs or regular people, us, co-workers, staff, children, there's never a dull moment. Never. You can say the rhythm of the week is very strong. We do it for the children. We do it for ourselves. It's really, really important. But every single day is different. So I think it's also how we look at life. We can see the difference in everyday routine and make something living out of it. And it's not really difficult when you have all that commotion around.
And the challenges, I think, are what build the bonds. I mean, getting through the times that are tough, or when you're really short of people, or there's just a huge amount to do, or just big challenges. A lot of work to do, and money to raise, or we need to there's new regulations that come in, or COVID, or whatever it happens to be. I mean, from time to time, you're really thrown these curveballs, and how everybody kind of shows up and works together to make everything kind of smooth and harmonious again. Those memories.
And you can never make everybody happy. You can never make everything right. There's always going to be a mistake. And the mistake is there because we are living beings. And when you live life, you run into difficulties and you make mistakes. And I think it's just, that's what's the fun part of it, although it's always tricky. But
yeah, there's that Leonard Cohen song. I think it goes something like, "Ring out the Forget your perfect offerings, ring out the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything, that is how the light gets in. That's such a beautiful lyric, and I think that kind of expresses community. The offering is important, it doesn't have to be perfect, but what comes is pretty remarkable.
My grown children have jobs that include a certain amount of social responsibility. I think if I counted right, we're now 17 when we get all together. Elsa and I, the children and their spouses and the grandchildren. And we had a little gathering this summer, and at one moment, one of my children observed that one or the other of the spouses who had grown up in a more typical nuclear family was finding everything a bit much, where they were all thriving on it because they were used to the camaraderie and the cooperation and the being together and the caring for each other and all of that. They had really grown up in that, and it was still something they were very fond of to have from time to time.
There were times for the children when the grass was really greener elsewhere. Why can't we live like normal people? And,
I think that's the story
sort of thing.
every family hears. Why can't we be a normal family?
There were times of friction, but then, for example, when they wrote their college application essay, they spoke about how meaningful this life had been for them to prepare them, make them more tolerant people, made them more accepting of. It's just, I was so pleased that actually the good outweighed the bad, because you have both, right? You have both as you go along.
I just know, if I think about it, how rich their life has been by, getting to know all these different people from all these different backgrounds and cultures, and the students. I think it took, I remember our oldest, he must have been like 5 or 6 when he at some point asked, why doesn't that student talk? It didn't even occur to him that was something wrong up until that time, until he was like 5. It was like, he just accepted them, that this is who they are, and this is, what, they are just children. And, I think that kind of level of acceptance and tolerance, as you said, I think it's what a privilege to grow up with that, especially in today's world, where it's all about, it's okay to be different, it doesn't matter.
The last thing I'd say is also the number of families that we have made friends with over the years, the students that we've met and the parents that we've formed relationships with. There's some lifelong friends, that we still see, that we can, if we need a bed for the night, we can stay with, that, come and visit and do things for us at parent workshops. Or, the bonds that endure too. There's a bigger community which includes so many of those families, and again, sadly, when we were young and some of the parents were much older than us, so, we're going to the funerals of parents of our students now, and now I've particularly I think through my work in development, I have, long-term friendships with the children of people that were parents when I first came, who are now, in their 50s like me, and who are in their own way kind of, turning back and contributing to the school. And to have that circle of people also who become part of the family, even though they never lived here, is, it really is a big community. And I think we're just, however hard sometimes it may be, we're also, as everyone said, we're so lucky to be able to have this experience.